Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Chris. I got to says, okay. Thanks, Chris. Steve Lamb, alcoholic. It's good to be here. It's good to be sober. And I got to tell you, to start out, I got a lot of my heroes that are on the screen today, and I'm very impressed by that. And my friend Calvin likes to say no doubt, and I'm starting to have a couple doubts actually because I'm looking because I know I'm the rookie here. I appreciate the kind words, but I'm very mindful of the fact that for most of you, I am the rookie. I've been sober 27 years and some change. My sobriety date is July 27th, 1996. And my task this afternoon is to talk for a little bit about step 11 in terms of that particular sentence that I had led and read to us. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because it had a real impact on me when I went through this with my sponsor. My sponsor, Michael, took me through the steps. And when we got to a prayer, we said the prayer. When we got to a step, we worked the step. And we'd gone through. I was powerless over alcohol. My life's unmanageable. I got that. A power greater than myself can restore me to sanity. I have doubts. Sorry, Calvin, but I have doubts. I think it's possible. I think it's unlikely. I've made a decision, but I'm not really committed to this. I'm really I'm watching you, and I know that I've made a decision because I've done this inventory thing, and I've read the inventory, and I've done 6 and 7, and I got to admit it was a very superficial 6 and 7. It was really, it's all about willingness and humility. I have very little of either, but I've made this list of people that I've harmed that I'm supposed to make amends to in step 8. And I start making amends in step 9. I got this inventory process in 10 that we go back. It's rinse and repeat. Now I'm in step 11 because I've been told that we've entered the world of the spirit. And my sponsor, Michael, and I'm going to read it again because this is something that Michael took some time to work with me because he knew what he was dealing with. He knew what he was dealing with. And on page 87, it says, what used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. He then went on to say, being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it is not probable that we are going to be inspired at all times. We might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. And when I was new, I majored in absurd actions and ideas. I mean, it was unbelievable. I think I was a constant source of amusement to my sponsor, Michael. And one of the things that Michael had done was he explained to me that it's not in the big book, but there's a concept called checking that was developed in the Oxford group, which precedes Alcoholics Anonymous. And he talked to me about how there's a book called God Calling. It's edited by A.J. Russell. And it got morphed into the 24-hour day book, which was written by Richmond Walker. And the concept of God Calling was these 2 ladies from London would sit down and they would meditate and they would listen to God. And when they got this intuition from God, they would share with their spiritual advisor, their spiritual guide, and they would check on that because sometimes they weren't accurate. And my sponsor pointed out to me that there are a number of times in the big book where it doesn't use the term checking, but it talks a lot about how we're supposed to check on what we've done. It talks about it in relation to the 12 and 12. It talks about that on page 60 in relation to step 5. It talks about how we've just established conscious contact and we shouldn't do this alone. It talks about it's basically dangerous to go on spiritual means alone, that you're going to need some help, because you're going to have absurd actions and ideas. And he pointed out to me that on page 23 of the book, it says that we think, therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in the mind, not the body, And so what we're trying to do here is we're trying to fine tune the mind. We're trying to get in tune with the infinite. Okay, we're trying, and I'm having some difficulty with this whole concept with God and spirituality. And Michael's asking me, he said, well, okay, what am I supposed to do? He says, well, I'm supposed to listen. I'm supposed to pray and meditate. And really, there's a lot of different ways to meditate. There's no right way or wrong way, but it really helps if you listen for God's guidance and really to check, like we talked about. It's like, all right. but I'm still having some difficulty with God. He goes, well, what's your problem with God? I said, well, it's not that I don't believe in God. It's just people have been telling me things like, yeah, I need to find God. Essentially some of the more adamant, vocal members are saying like, find God or die. And I'm thinking, I not only don't want to find God, I'm kind of hoping he doesn't find me. I mean, I've read ahead, there's a whole 8, 9. This isn't going to go well. I mean, this is not going to go well. He said, well, look, just take your time and go through it. And he said, well, what's your concept of God? And I talked to him about my concept. And he said, well, why don't you try to set that aside for a while and use this as an experiment for what happens, and look at that word God as maybe just a placeholder for an experience you haven't had yet. And then he asked me, he said, do you like music? And I said, yeah, I like music. He said, do you know anybody that doesn't like music? I said, no, I think pretty much everybody likes music. I like music. And he said, well, if you were working with a guy that you're sponsored, because now you're in the 11th step, so now you're going to start sponsoring guys, would you tell that guy that if let's say he liked rock music, or he liked, heavy metal, or he liked polka, but you like blues and rock, would you tell him he's got to listen to the music that you like to listen to? I said, no, that doesn't make any sense. He goes, that's exactly what we're talking about in God. We're just suggesting that you get into the rhythm and harmony with the tune that makes sense to you. And then he asked me, he said, do you ever sing in the shower? And I'm like, well, yeah, it's kind of a personal question, but yeah, I do. I sing in the shower. So he said, you always know all the words to all the songs? I said, no, I just make stuff up. He goes, exactly. If you sing along with us, you'll get in tune. You'll get into the rhythm and harmony. Don't worry about it. And I got to tell you, I've been blessed. I sponsor quite a few guys. I've got Catholics. I've got Protestants. I've guys converted back and forth. I've got a couple Jews. I got a Hindu. I got a Buddhist. I got a guy who is, he's I don't know what you'd call him. He's like a Stonehenge dude. I don't understand it. I got other guys that they sit on their surfboard and they find a God of their understanding, or they walk in the woods. I got one guy who's Jewish. He likes Buddhism. He calls himself a Buju. It's all good. It's all good because it's all Alcoholics Anonymous, And so I'm like, I'm okay, but I'm a little skeptical. So I'm supposed to get into this practice, right? And I'm praying and meditating, right? And I'm asking for guidance and direction. And one of the things, like, what do I pray for? I'm like, well, let's pray for whatever makes sense to you. And one of my favorite things that I heard a long time ago from one of my heroes, a guy named Ralph W., was he said that there's essentially at least 2 basic forms of prayer. And when you're new, they kind of start out with, God help me, or maybe just help me, God help me. And then after a while, when you get a little recovery, you're like, God, give me, I need some stuff, man. I need some stuff. I'm starting to get better. I need some stuff. And then eventually, when you get to a more pure form of prayer, it's, God, use me, help me to be of service. And none of that makes any sense until you do it. But I'm supposed to pray, I'm supposed to meditate, and I'm supposed to listen. And he says, and then, when you get the guidance, tell me what you think the guidance is, and we're going to check on it, because this is part of the spiritual experience. So I'm like, all right, I'll give it a shot. So I remember the first one that I thought that I got guidance from. I said, I got it. I've been praying and meditating, and I think what's come up to me, I think I've got a hunch. I think I've got an inspiration. He's like, well, what is it? I said, well, I have an assistant, and she's really attractive, and she's getting ready to go to the Caribbean, and I think God's telling me I need to go with her to the Caribbean. And he goes, really? I said, yeah. And then he says, aren't you married? I'm like, well, yeah, I'm married. And he goes, well, and what's going on with your assistant? I'm like, nothing. I said, nothing? He said, no, nothing. I mean, so you haven't made a pass at her or anything? You haven't done anything inappropriate? No. So this is all just in your mind, right? I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you could, I mean, but you told me, this is what came to me. And he says, well, look, I'll tell you what, why don't you see if you get that guidance once a day for the next week? Let's see if it's consistent. That's the checking. We're going to see. And I did. And unfortunately, that's not the guidance that I got consistently. I didn't get that. So that's been really helpful. And then, one of the other things that happened to me was I was praying and meditating. It was really early in the morning. And I heard, or I thought I heard, I thought I heard God. And what I was doing was when I was praying and meditating, I was kind of thinking about this phrase. It's a biblical phrase, be still and know that I'm God. Because he had talked to me, Michael had talked to me about like try to listen to the still small voice. So I'm doing this, and I'd said some prayers and I'm meditating and I'm listening to the still small voice. And what I heard really, really clearly was shut up. And what I'd been thinking about was, be still and know that I'm God. Be still, be still. I'm not still. I don't feel still. I just know that I'm God. What do you mean, know that I'm God? The book tells me I got to stop playing God. This doesn't make any sense. So I'm got this whole hamster wheel going on in my head. This is my meditation. Which is very busy, very busy. And what I heard was shut up. And it kind of scared me. So I went outside now because it's maybe 4 o'clock in the morning. I go outside, I'm looking, I think maybe there's a trash man or something out there. There's nobody out there, nobody. So I thought, oh man, I don't know what that means, but apparently maybe I'm getting God's guidance. So I went to Michael and I told him what happened. And I'm like, and I heard this voice and it said, shut up. What do you think it means? And he leaned in real close. He said, I don't know. Maybe it just means you should shut up. I'm like, man, I thought there'd be something, like something more, I was looking for a little more, right? You just, be still, be quiet, just listen, And one of the hardest things for me to do when I'm new is listen, it's just, I got to pay attention and I got to listen. So I'm going through this process and, I've been praying and meditating. And one of the issues that I had, which was all in my mind, was I hated my father. Because in my mind, my father had deserted me. And when I did my fourth step and my fifth step, my father was the first one on the list. I told him that my father deserted me when I was 4 or 5 years old. And, I grew up in Vegas. He left. He went to the Southeast Asia and he was in the Air Force. He joined Air America. He met a Thai woman. He married her apparently before he divorced my mother. I've got a half sister, Peck. I've never met her. I've never met Lien Thong, my stepmother. And I haven't, I'm 37 by the time I got sober, 38 by the time I'm doing inventory, and I haven't really hardly spoken to my father in 3 decades. So this is a justified resentment. I'm resentful of it. And I'd read my inventory, and Michael, because it's an interactive process, had asked me some questions, and he pointed out to me that I had this newcomer plan, and the newcomer plan was that I was going to leave the country. I had some passports that I'd acquired while I was in the Army that I should have turned in 1993 at a neglect. I know they call it stealing, but at the time I just, I thought they might come in handy. And so I had not turned these in and I was getting ready to leave. And those passports that were all current, they had not expired, but my tourist passport, my blue tourist passport had expired. So I can't execute my seemingly brilliant, newcomer plan, right? And Michael reminded me, he said, really, what you were planning on doing with your because you had a wife and daughter, right? He said, yeah. He goes, and you weren't planning on taking them with you, were you? I'm like, well, no. And he said, so really what you're planning on doing is essentially what your father did. You're planning on deserting your wife and your daughter. And I remember I said, well, I mean, if you look at it that way, because I couldn't look at it that way. And he said, well, this is part of, you're going to have to pray and meditate about this. You're going to have to ask God for guidance for this because, this is a big one. You're going to have to make amends for this. I'm like, I'm not making amends to this. He goes, well, are you willing? I said, well, yeah, all right. He goes, well, look, you pray, I'll pray, we'll both pray. And we're going to check, right? We're going to have a conversation about this. I said, yeah, okay, no problem. So I'm praying and meditating. I'm making amends. I'm starting to sponsor guys. I'm taking them through the steps. I'm feeling pretty good about myself, and guys are getting sober. They're sponsoring other guys. I got this whole merry band of miscreants. It's going pretty well, but I'm not making amends to my father. And when I'm praying and meditating, I remember thinking about my father and nothing's coming up. Nothing's coming up, right? And so Michael would ask me periodically every few weeks or month or so, he'd say, well, how's it going with your father? Fine. Have you prayed and meditated about it? I said, yeah. He said, well, what's coming to you? I'm like, nothing, not a thing. It's blank. It's all right. Keep praying and meditating. And then after a few years, I made an idle comment to my sponsor, just a casual comment. Hey, look, I've been praying and meditating because, I'm a trial lawyer. I got to go up to Anchorage, Alaska. I got to do some depositions to get ready for a trial. I'll miss my home group. And he got all excited. He goes, man, that's great. You'll make amends to your father. Like, what are you talking about? He goes, yeah, didn't you tell me your father, he lives in Wasilla, Alaska. That's only 30 miles outside of Anchorage. You'll make amends to your father. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. You're connecting two unrelated dots. He goes, no, you're praying and meditating, right? Yeah. He goes, because I'm praying and meditating too. And I'm telling you, God's calling. He's talking. You need to make him. I'm like, I'm not hearing that. No. He goes, well, either do it or don't, but I suggest you call your father. And I called my father and I made amends. And, father was restored to a son and a son to a father. And that's Alcoholics Anonymous. And not only did my marital relations improve after that, um, but I started to hear a little less noise when I prayed and meditated. A lot of times people will say, I can't pray and meditate. My head is too busy. And what I'll always ask them is the same questions that were asked to me. Well, have you made amends? Maybe the channel was cluttered. On page 99 in the 12 and 12, it talks about, Lord, make me a channel. And they call that the prayer of St. Francis. St. Francis never said it. In 1910, in La Cloche, which is a French publication that came out about the prayer, and it's attributed to Francis, but Francis never said it. But it's a really good prayer. The interesting thing about it, though, is in the version the most popular religious version is, Lord, make me an instrument, not make me a channel. And I can wield an instrument. I can hit you over the head with a sober stick. I can get you straight, but that's not what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous. We clear a channel so that we can pass it on. And you got to listen to do that. You got to listen and you got to pay attention. And it's not, we talk about the hunch or intuition, and it's not clear to me until I check with the sponsor. Oftentimes he reminds me of stuff, and I got to tell you, one of the things that was really a difficulty with prayer and meditation and this whole, listening. And I one of my sponsor was a guy named Redmond, Scott Redmond. He passed away, and one of the things that he had talked about was there's a Buddhist nun, Pema Chodron, who used to talk about this form of meditation, which is really popular. You can sit there and you can listen to yourself, and you can watch the thoughts. And when the thoughts come, you can like take a feather or a brush and just brush it away. And that worked for a lot of people. Man, I'm just brushing the hell out of everything. I'm just brushing. That wasn't working. There's a lot of brushing going on. And I got to hang out with Sandy Beach quite a bit. And I was complaining about that at one point in time. And he said, look, in this prayer and meditation, you got to understand that you're in the movie of your life. Like the book says, you think that you're the director. You're not the director. You're not even a very good actor. Sometimes you're a 2-bit stagehand. Sometimes you're just watching the show, but you're not going to get out of the movie of your life. So you've got a choice. You can look at it as a horror film, or you can look at it as a comedy. You can not drift into morbid reflection. And if you do that, you're going to find that life is going to go a lot better. And you can just watch the film and tell me what happens. And I did that for a while. And one of the things that happened to me was I'm listening to the still small voice, and I'm watching the film, and all this stuff is going on in my mind. And like Sandy suggested, don't judge it, just watch it. Just be the watcher, observe. And eventually what happened is the film faded to black. It just faded to black into nothingness. And the book says that God is either everything or he is nothing. I understand that concept. Perhaps it's both, because within everything is nothing. And it's hard to explain and it's hard to experience, but once you see it, you talk about that sense of ease and comfort that comes from the first drink. When it fades to black like that, when you've gone through that process, when you're looking for the hunch or occasional inspiration, and it's just blank, that for me, that's a sweet spot. That's a sweet spot. But some of the things that happened to me with the occasional hunch or inspiration that didn't go too well is and you know, I'm going to talk about the 11th step, but it's hard when you do 11. It's like you can't do 11 without doing 6 or 7, because you realize that you got some character defects, and the 6 and 7 are like the boomerang steps. You know, Bill Wilson talked about creating a boomerang, and to me, I just kind of did this surface pass of 6 and 7. But one of the things that I noticed when I was praying and meditating, and I was doing my evening review, is I noticed that I'm a dick. I mean, I'm just my level of sarcasm is just gnarly. I mean, and I'm not talking about an idle comment. I'm like, this is not, and I've got enough. You know, I've been working enough where I realize this ain't right. You know, I got to stop. So I'm sharing with my sponsor, and you know, and I got to cut it out, but I keep doing it, right? So I'm talking to my sponsor. I'm praying and meditating. I'm asking for the still small voice. The still small voice says, you gotta stop the sarcasm. But it's not stopping. So I'm talking to my sponsor. What do I do? Because I mean, I don't know, but like, you know, when they talked about 6 and 7 early, they talked about, you know, you can kneel. You know, I mean, you've prayed, you've asked God to remove these character defects, but have you kneeled? Have you showed this humility by kneeling? No, I got to do that. So I kneeled, and I asked for it. That didn't work. And I'm meditating, and it's still coming up, and I'm a recidivist. I'm a repeat offender, and I can't stop. And I'm making amends, but this is just it's messy, right? So I go back to my sponsor. He says, "Okay, I tell you what, this isn't the book, but I'm going to make a suggestion. I want you to get a Post-it. You got a Post-it? Yeah." He goes, "Okay, take a Post-it. I want you to write, 'Don't be a dick' on the Post-it. I want you to put it on the mirror so you see it at night. I want you to put it on your dashboard. I want to put it up by the office, put it all over the place." Like, really? He goes, "Yeah, give it a shot." So I got the Post-it. You know, I got the Post-it. Don't be a dick. I'm praying and meditating. I'm on my knees. You know, I'm trying to get the still small voice, and I'm still a dick, right? So I'm going to Michael. I'm like, because I'm checking. You know, the occasional hunch or inspiration is not really. It's not getting it right. And I go to Michael. He goes, "Well, I don't know, man. We got to step it up a notch." So I'm going to call my sponsor. His sponsor at the time was Scott Redmond, and he called Scott, and Scott said, "Well, I'll call. I'll talk to him." So Scott calls me, right? And he says, "I understand you got this issue. You got this issue with sarcasm. You've been praying and meditating. You're trying to get the hunch and inspiration about what to do about this, and it's not going away, right?" So yeah. He goes, "All right, I got it. I got it." So now I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to get the answer. My sponsor is going to give me the answer, right? And what happens is Scott starts reading me inventory. I'm like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm reading you inventory." I go, "Yeah, I know you're reading him, but you know, what are you doing?" Because I am reading you inventory. What's the problem? I go, "Well, that's not right." Because, "What do you mean that's not right?" "Well, I mean, I write inventory and I read it to my sponsor, and my sponsees, they read it to me, but you know, my sponsor doesn't read it to me. Certainly my sponsor's sponsor doesn't read it to me." Because, where did you read that? I don't know. Apparently I made it up. I mean, I don't know. Because look, you know, you're part of the family, right? You know, this is you know, we're supposed to be shoulder to shoulder here, you know. And he goes, "The reason why I do this is, you know, it helps with the humility, because you're praying and meditating, you're getting quiet, you're asking God for guidance, but there's some kind of blockage that's going on, and you know, maybe you need to practice more humility." And this is one of the ways that I practice humility, is that I read inventory to some of the guys that I sponsor, and obviously, you know, my grand sponsee. And then he says, "You ought to try it." And I could see the point. I mean, I did. I get it. I understand the spiritual value of that. But I hung up thinking, there is no way in hell I'm going to do that, because this would be embarrassing. You know, this is guys. You know, these are guys that I sponsor, right? And so I'm not gonna do that, right? And then I finally, you know, I'm praying and meditating. I got the Post-it, "Don't be a dick." I'm on my knees, and I'm still doing it. And I'm praying and meditating. I'm consistent, but it's just, this is not being removed. And finally, I was beaten into a state of reasonableness, and I read inventory to one of my sponsees, who, by the way, thought it was hilarious. He wanted to stop me. He said, don't go real fast. I want to hear this real quick, right?" You know, and then he like tells me, you know, are you going to share this with other sponsees?" I'm like, "Man, do I have to?" Because I'm saying maybe it would help them. And what happened was through this process, I went from just simple fellowship to an actual relationship with the people that I sponsor and my sponsor. And it went up another level. And that helped me in my prayer and meditation. And I was more comfortable with that. And to a certain degree, I think looking back on it, it helped clear more of the channel. So that's been my experience in the 11th step. And that's my experience in relation to the hunch or inspiration. And also that it hasn't gone well many times. But I will tell you, if you're new on this stuff is hilarious. If you share this, I mean, it seems really tragic, but man, we are absolutely pathetically, perfectly imperfect. And if you pay attention to this, we're wildly entertaining. And I hope you lean into it because it's a lot of fun. Thanks for having me here today.
Thank you so much, Teresa. My name is John, Grateful Alcoholic. Beautiful share, Steve. Dougie, come on in. Welcome.
Hi, Dan. I'm Dougie. I'm an alcoholic addict. I've been going through like a really bad relapse. Like we been in hospital 4 times in the last month. Went to get into rehab and like treatment centers and stuff like that. I've been really struggling, and it was another friend has asked me to join the meeting. I'm just sharing a wee bit where I'm at. I'm quite paranoid. I'm not gonna tell you what I've got sitting next to me. But there's people have stolen my house, and like someone slashed my back when I was sleeping.
Dougie, I just want to say welcome, and I'm glad you're here. And my number's in my name, brother. So please reach out to me. Please chat me your number.
See, my SIM card's not actually working. If you can get me on WhatsApp, then
Yeah.
problem.
I'm gonna send you a chat with my email as well, okay? And
Yeah,
you send me your number and I'll reach out to you on WhatsApp. I'm glad you're here, man. Stay close, please. You're not alone. You're not alone, and we're glad you're here. Thank you, Dougie. Come on in, Alice.
Hey family, my name is Alice. I'm a grateful member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And Steve Lamb, you know that I'm a big fan. And I have a question, and I want to acknowledge a couple things before I ask the question, right? Your command of the literature, right? Being a historian, like loving the details, being so funny, man. You're right. We are wildly entertaining. But here's the question. You said that I have to get a message consistently to know that it's not the disease, right? It's not the problem that centers in my mind. Otherwise, I'm going to do all kind of crazy things. I love the story that you told, but can you give people a sense of how you have worked with people who come to you with absurd ideas? Because we can't stop people from doing what they're going to do. But as a sponsor, and I love the reading inventory, but what are other techniques that you use to help people see the truth, which is the voice in your head isn't always the voice of God? Thank you, thank you, thank you. I also am going to jump off early, but I just love you, Steve.
Thank you, Alice. Happy birthday.
Thanks, Alice. My favorite technique, if you want to call it a technique, is really something that I got from Michael and from Scott. And it was and is to ask a bunch of questions. And what my sponsor had a tendency to do, ask questions to which the answer was pretty obvious. And sometimes I would kind of terminate the conversation by saying, okay, I got it, never mind. Because the answers are there. And to me, it is much more beneficial for me or for a sponsee to come to the answer themselves than for me to be directed. This is what you need to do. This is what you should do. So questions like, have you considered this? Have you considered that? I mean, in relation to the situation with my father, I remember, Michael asked me, do you listen? Do you like the Lord's Prayer? Yeah, it's fine. What about that clause, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us? What do you think of that? I mean, like, that's a damn trick question, because it's a spiritual axiom. It's a truth, right? And I try to do that type of stuff with the guys that I sponsor. Okay, you've got guidance. I got it. But you're married. But you're horny, right? And I got that. So I gotta tell you, and I understand that you've been asked to sponsor this person, and it's a woman, and she's very attractive. And I'm not going to tell you not to do that, but I'm going to ask you about what your motives. Why do you want to do that? And usually the sponsee goes, "Oh shit," because we know what our motives are. We are sketchy. We are just, and this rationalization is. It's inexhaustive. I mean, it's unbelievable what we can do. And I think for me, the best way to deal with that is to ask questions. Yeah. So that's what I try to do.
It's a beautiful answer, Steve. Curiosity. Lana, welcome. Come on in.
Hi, everyone. Lana, alcoholic. Steve, thank you so much for your share. And you really touched me when you talked about the perfectly imperfect. I had a issue where I couldn't forgive myself for something that I did in recovery, and my sister passed away when we hadn't been speaking. It took me 3 years to let it go. And it was because my daughter had this T-shirt and it said perfectly imperfect. And for some reason, at that time, I got it. I got it. What's the purpose of a God, of prayer and meditation, if I'm going to take on all this stuff and God wants me free? That's the whole purpose of me being in this program, so that I can, be altruistic, give back what's been so, been given to me. And I felt blocked, even though I just kept doing the process. I kept helping people and doing what I was supposed to do, but I could not let go of, how I felt about myself and not talking to my sister at the time of her death. So anyway, when you said that, I connected in a way, you just brought tears to my eyes. So thank you so much, Steve. It's good to see you again.
Thanks, Lana. I will tell you, there's one thing that Emmett Fox once said in Around the World, and Emmett Fox, a lot of guys and women read that, and he talked about William Penn. There's a story about William Penn, who was the founder of Pennsylvania, and William Penn's pastor was a guy named George Fox. And William Penn had developed the custom and practice of carrying around this short sword, in his tunic. And he knew that this was inconsistent with his life as a Quaker, because he's supposed to be a pacifist. So he went to Pastor Fox and said, "What do I do? This is killing me. And it's one of these things that's like sarcasm. What do I do?" And Pastor Fox said, "You will put down the sword when you can no longer wear the sword." And the way we put down the sword, when we can no longer hold the sword, is when we share that we've been holding the sword, because I will tell you, part of it is, I don't know if it's embarrassing or whatever, it's like I can ask God forever for guidance and direction, but when I really, in a relatively public manner with the guys that I sponsor and my sponsor, really reveal bad behavior and ask for guidance and direction, what happens is I pray and meditate and ask God for guidance, direction. And what happens every single time is he sends me to you and you to me. That seems to be how it works to me.
Thank you, Steve. Come on in, Marilyn. Good to see you.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much, Steve. My name is Marilyn. I am alcoholic. I really always appreciate any time that I can sit at your feet and just hear you share your wisdom and your message. Just always touches me, and I get so much out of it. So I'm going to ask a two-part question just so I can hear you elaborate a little more. As Teresa said, we're going to get some more out of you, Steve. So when you brought up you talked about the St. Francis prayer and how
Yeah.
some of the prayers say, Lord, make me a channel of thy peace. Some say, make me an instrument of thy peace. And I like how you talked about the channel coming through the channel. And I'd like you to talk a little bit more about that channel. But I also like to ask you a question where it says, for it is by self-forgetting that one finds. Now, I say this prayer daily. This is a part of my regular practice. But always when I get to that one sentence, I'm not quite positive the exact meaning. I get the gist of it, but it is by self-forgetting that one finds. Could you talk a little bit about that for me, if you don't mind?
Sure. Thanks, Marilyn. It's always good to see you. In relation to the channel, it's something that has to be cleared. It's clogged. It's like a pipe, and it's clogged up with resentments and unresolved amends that need to be made. And once that's cleared up, it can flow more clearly. And the point is that it's not flowing from me, it's just flowing through me. And that's why, like I said, I like to ask questions. My sponsor's sponsor likes to ask questions. In relation to the self-forgetting from the page 99 on the 12 and 12 and the what's referred to as the prayer of St. Francis, or the 11th step prayer. The book talks about selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our problem. So it's all about self. So I'm trying to get out of self and into God. And, some of the religious folks, the guys like Keating and Rohr, will talk about the self, lowercase self, and then the uppercase self, capital SELF. That's in the same context of, like it says on page 13 of the big book, where it says our newfound friend, capital F, whether you call it God or something else, this higher power. There's the self, which is capitalized, and then there's the lowercase self, which is consumed by ego and desires and wants and needs that are way beyond the proportion of what we're supposed to have. And what happens is, if you're an alcoholic, I don't think it happens to people that aren't just alcoholic, but we seek to have a real skill set here for alcoholics. And what happens is we see something and it becomes a desire and we want it. And then it turns into an expectation and a need. And then that turns into a demand, and it's not fulfilled. And because it's not fulfilled, we have a resentment. That's the number one offender. So if we don't have a desire, then we're okay. Sandy Beach used to say, "You want to always get your way, Lamb?" I say, "Yeah, I do. I really do. What do I need to do?" He says, "Don't have a way." I'm like, "Oh, crap, Sandy, that's a shallow thing." And all spiritual truth seems shallow until you experience it. It's very interesting because it's just simple. It's like the book says, it's simple but not easy. And we ought to get out of self. And the best way to get out of self is to talk to the new man or the new woman, to try to be of service. I mean, at a minimum, you can just say, what are you doing? Or better yet, ask them, hey, what have you been thinking about? If they're new, that'll keep you entertained for at least 3 or 4 minutes. My God. And I won't be thinking about them. And if I'm not thinking about me, and I'm thinking about him, then my experience is that's that sweet spot. That's that space. That's that conscious contact, you know? So I think that's what we're talking, at least that's what I'm talking about. That's how I see it. Thanks, Marilyn.
Hey, thank you, Steve. Thanks for the question, Marilyn. Hey, Martin, come on in. Good to see you.
Thank you so much. Alcoholic Martin, all the way from Ontario, Canada. Steve, you shared a couple of things and I have a few questions, and I'll make it real quick for you. I'm a note taker.
Okay.
You mentioned that the 24-hour day book was penned or authored by Richmond Walker.
Yeah.
Now I have a 24-hour day book here
Mhm.
that was printed back in the early 60s.
Mhm.
And on the very last page, written page of that book, before you get into the note portion of it, it says here, compiled by a member of the group at Daytona Beach, Florida.
Right.
Now, this
That's
book is
Richmond.
actually printed.
That's Richmond Walker. He put it in a printing press outside the courthouse in Dayton. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Daytona Beach. Yeah.
Because it is printed by Hazelton, so I didn't know where you got the info from. So Richmond Walker.
Yeah. Apparently we tried to give it to World Services. They didn't want it, so Hazelton published it.
Okay. Because his name is not accredited in this book on any page.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
In fact, if you look in the 24-hour day book, it refers to God calling and A.J. Russell, but it does not refer to Richmond Walker, but it's Richmond Walker.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Steve. Come on in, Calvin. No doubt, no doubt. Love you, brother.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Steve, for a good message. My name's Calvin, and I'm alcoholic. And you're a special kind of guy, man. And I get a joy out of hearing you when I hear you in the mornings. And it's amazing to see you come from California to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, every morning for a meeting. It's amazing to see that, so, I'm just grateful that I had a chance to meet you, man, and to be with you in the mornings. But I was thinking about when you talked about meditation and you talk about going to that dark when it gets quiet and it gets blank. I really touched me, man, because I get that. I get that when I sit. I couldn't get that at first because things were zooming all over the place. But as I kept doing it over and over again, I can go to that place of dark, to quiet, to still, and if something comes, it just comes in and goes back out and it still stays still. And how that look like for you, Steve?
Yeah, it's one of these things that's hard to describe. It's like on page 64, it says, that power, which is God, it's you can't comprehend it fully. You can't define it. But we always try to define it. We try to name it. And whenever we name anything, we limit it conceptually. So we try, what do we do? Usually we tell stories. We're a society of storytellers because, this is God. It's like my friend Bill C talks about. He was in Hawaii and, he had a moment where the wind, the breeze just went through the trees and he just knew that was it. And it's so hard to explain. I remember years ago, I was driving along the beach because I live by the beach, and I saw the dolphins running in the surf, and they were teaching the older dolphins were teaching the babies how to surf, right? And it just dawned on me, people come here to go to vacation. Who knew? I mean, it's just like, it's this waking up is incredibly exciting. It can also be a bit rude, by the way, because a lot of us, we don't want to wake up. But it's very beneficial and it's very fruitful. And that stillness, that quietness is a beautiful thing. Now, I will tell you this, though. I remember the first time that happened, I remember going, man, that was cool. I'm going there. Tomorrow morning, I'm going there. Didn't happen for quite some time. It doesn't seem to be able to be something that I can do on command. I can be still, I can get quiet, I can walk into the stillness. But that moment that's indescribable, I can't do it on command. So one of the reasons why I pray and meditate is because who knows when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. So that's why I do it. Thanks, Calvin.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Calvin. Hey, Sally Ann, welcome. Come on in.
Kia ora. Kia ora, Steve. Kia ora to some friends who have come out to New Zealand. Kia ora, it's hello in our Indigenous language of Māori. Steve, I'm just buzzing here in Aotearoa through similar experiences. Sorry, Sally and Al-Anon. And I took so many notes, as you can see. This is probably the most important one. And my question to you, Steve, I'm a big fan of Sandy B as well, and listened to him today and love that he can carry a message to me today. And he talked about getting still and meditating and listening to God, and over a period of years getting a message about eternal love. And your message that you carried to me today, I wonder if there's more. Like, I love a message that starts with don't, but I wonder if there's a message that starts with do. Is there a next part of this if I was to carry this to my spiritual life? Thanks.
I'll tell you what the message is. It's all is well. Despite all appearances to the contrary, all is well, all the time, every day, all the time. I just have to be present for the moment. And I'm not always able to do it, but I believe it, and I know it to be true. But all is well. And that's all the mystics basically say that. I mean, one of my favorite things is that there's a story from Anthony DeMello, and he's talking about this guru and this the spiritual student, the sponsee for Weight of a Woman, but he wants some guidance, right? So he's asking the master, what do I do? And he goes through this whole process. What's the answer? What am I supposed to do? But this is the time of silence for the master. So he's a little annoyed. He sees the student and he writes down a little message, and he writes down a message, and then the message is awareness. So the student, the sponsee, is all excited. He reads this, awareness. So if the answer is awareness, the spiritual message is, that's great. And then he goes back and thinks, what the hell does that mean? So he goes back to the guru, to the master, and he goes, I know this is your time of silence, but I need a little something more. Could you help me? And the guru sighs. He doesn't say anything because he's not supposed to talk. So he writes awareness, awareness, awareness. Gives it back to the student. Student looks at it, reads it, goes, oh, that's good, that's good, that's good. What the hell? So he goes back to the guru. He goes, what does that mean? And he writes awareness, awareness, awareness means awareness. It's simple, but not easy. You just have to lean into it.
That's beautiful, Steve. Thank you. Got enough time for a quick one. LB, can you just turn your video on for us, please? Welcome.
Do I have to keep it? Hi, do I have to keep it on the whole time I speak?
No, it's all good. Just wanted.
Okay, okay, thanks. I don't know how to. I'm on camera myself. It's not gonna be that quick. Oh,
I turned it off. I turned it off.
Thank you so much. I'm not. I'm here to listen to learn, which I have been listening, and that's what I heard from you, Steve. That you got to listen, because if we don't listen, how am I going to learn? And I had to be quick, but I'm the fastest person in the world, so I'm going to take a deep breath, and I'm going to do my 3 Ps. I'm going to pause and pray, and finally proceed, because I do listen a lot, but I get confused because I hear all these different things about this, like this way has to be in this way, and so I just have to sit and listen and stay sober, because that's the only thing I have to actually do. to stay sober. I have 6 months and I think 8 days. I don't know, but 6 months, that was huge. But I'm back. Yeah, thank you. This is the first time I'm in this meeting, and I just wanted to say I really appreciate you, Steve. And I want to be a channel, not an instrument. I want to listen, and I do. I heard you. I don't want to be a dick, but I'm going to say what I mean finally, and mean what I say finally, and say what I mean what you say what you mean what you say, but don't say it meanly. That's what I'm going to do it. I'm working that. That's my program. I appreciate you in this group, so hopefully I'll be back. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, OB.
Thanks.
Hey, Doug, we got about 30 seconds. If you got a real quick one, come on in.
Yes, hello. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic from Canada. My name's Doug. Thanks, Steve. That was wonderful. And it just sounds to me a lot like what they talk about with the two-way prayer. Do you ever use that phrase when you're describing your connection with God?
Yeah, the two-way prayer is something that you hear about. You know, that's an Oxford group thing. Two-way prayer. You know, yeah, that's that. Essentially, I think that's the same thing.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Sure.